This conference will now be recorded.
Hello, color theory students. This is Peter Olson. I'm your professor if you're in section 1. If you're in Professor Pennett's class, don't panic. He and I are working together, and I'm providing the critique on the grayscale hero portraits that you've submitted so far this week for Thursday. So going through, first up, we're going to look at Jay's work. So Jay, you're doing Edward Snowden. This is a well done portrait. It's got some interesting stylistic techniques and it looks like him for sure. Couple things I would say, take your dark gray and perhaps create a little bit of texture in the hair so it's not just one big massive shape. It could be little highlights or something that give it a little more shape and dimension. And the cropping here looks a little awkward, kind of cut off. So I would sort of smooth that out a little more. I don't mind this sort of drippy thing going on. I think you could enhance that a little further. And some sort of interesting background would be great. If you could create a shape or something in the background that relates to him and his story. I mean, the first thing I thought of was zeros and ones or something, but it's up to you. But I would say add some background. That might be a little more interesting. You've done a great job using some techniques with gradient or with shading and cross hatching, and so this is off to a really good start. Next up, we've got Alexis. Hey, Anna. Anna's just joined us. Anna, I'm going through everybody's work, and then you and I will talk privately right after, if that's okay. All right, next up, Alexis, you're doing Walt Disney, who is a lot of people's hero. It looks like him. It's got a great composition with this background element of the castle. So I like where you're going with this. A couple things that I note right away. First of all, his hands folded. This is tough and complex, and it distracts from everything else. So I would keep this simpler. I think some of these highlights are misplaced or something, but just keep these pretty simple. You might even remove them altogether if you can and just finish off his face and shoulder. I think that might be the best idea because hands are tough, I know that, and this is a lot of detail and distraction from the main element. Um, Also, I feel like his eyes are off kilter a little bit. Just sort of check that better. This line of shadow along the edge of the highlight seems misplaced as well. I feel like, yes, maybe there should be some of this dark gray here on this side of the nose, but it looks black and it's very thin. It kind of looks like a line across his nose. So reconsider that. Some of these white lines here seem misplaced. If you think of the progression of shadow to highlight, you know, from light gray, dark gray to black. So when you have sort of an interruption like that, it looks a little odd. This could maybe be a little bigger in the space, but I think your composition overall is very good. All right, Amber, you're doing Demi Lovato. And this is a nice portrait from a photo. I would say make sure that you sort of create your own feeling for this. Some of these these are like artifacts from the photo or something. I would clean that up and simplify it. Simplify this light highlight on the lip. Perhaps the darker gray would fill in a little more here. Her face is, this is obviously a professional photo. It's got some very front-facing lighting. A lot of this is working well, but I would just go through and sort of clean up these little details that come from the photo. Also, her hair is a big black void. I'm sure there's some sort of highlight. I would take your dark gray and maybe create some texture there to create some dimension in her hair. The frame composition, it's okay. I like this. I mean, I see the, you know, mood swings, but maybe she's bigger in the frame. This gap feels off, you know, like I would put her so that her head is actually almost going underneath these. So just take up that space, might as well use it all. But you are off to a good start. All right, Sean, this is your son, Chase, and I've given you some feedback on this before. First of all, you've got too many grays. So this is a dark gray, this is another dark gray, another dark gray, light gray, you've got an even lighter gray, and then light gray in the eyes. So you've got to consolidate it down to the right number of grays. The line work is sort of functioning as both shadows and dividing lines. So I would use tone where you can to define the nose, and instead of just a line, maybe a bit of the light gray here as a shadow to create the shape on the nose. The big concern is the composition, which right now is cropped very harshly on the right and top. I would like you to think about this entire artwork as a whole and how it's going to look on a shirt. Perhaps you don't need this whole underneath part. I would finish off his head and the hood, perhaps, and maybe give other elements in the background or something that you could tell a little more of the story of your son. Some of the line work, you could consider giving some weight to that line so that it's, got a little more heft to it. Functions more like a shadow. Maybe add a highlight to the eyes. But if you want to go over this with me one-on-one, please let me know. But I think you got a fair amount of work to do to get this up to standard. So, all right, next up, Amir, you're doing Whitney Houston. This is a good composition, and the photo is kind of a famous photo, so you really need to make this your own. And I would say, again, like the Demi Lovato photo, you've got these little kind of detailed artifacts from the photo. This should be just a smooth shape here instead of all the jaggy edges. You're picking up some highlights in the hair, which is good, but you got to sort of clean this up and give it a stylistic look, like it's your own thing. This whole shape here with all this jagged, rough edge here, you want to clean that up and smooth it out. You managed to get these curls in pretty well, so, but yeah, and you're gonna have to check everything to make sure you got the right number of grays. Right now it looks okay, but I have a feeling some of these hairs might have picked up some additional gray. All right, so that's section 1. In section 2, no one submitted work, so make sure you get that in. I'm gonna take a look again tomorrow. So if you're working away, we can give you some feedback. Remember, your first submission for the discussion is due today by midnight, so keep working. That is all.